Welcome to the Ace Show. Jim Rohn, a successful sales coach, he's got a really great quote when he says, "Whoever renders service to many puts himself in line for greatness." And I feel like the call that we're going to be on here is in line for greatness because of who I got on the call. Cory Simon. Hey, Cory.
Hey.
That's what this show is about, right? That's what this is about. It's really to help professionals succeed. You, whoever's listening to this, in service of helping you succeed and thrive both professionally and personally. And this is where we get to showcase experts and aces like Cory here in their field and leverage that knowledge to support you all in the community. And I get the privilege and honor of introducing Cory Simon, good friend of mine now. Lives out really in two worlds when it comes to career and professional, the landscape that he's in. He's the founder of Big Click Energy, which is marketing services agency. And he also has a practice where he helps professionals build resumes that really drive and get results. And so if your result is to get hired, he's got the content and the information that can help. Father of a beautiful little girl. One of the many things I admire about you, Cory, among many things, right? One is that you have this, what I call a growth mindset. And, you know, in our work together, by the way, Cory has helped me with ACE. And so if there's anything that looks good on the ACE brand, you can thank Cory for that and this genius in that brand of his. But he's got a growth mindset. And so we're always having conversations. He's always looking to not necessarily pivot, but make changes and tweaks to help drive more traffic, bring more people in, help our brand grow. And so I'm just really lucky, and I don't want to let you go, man. We're hopefully a team for forever, or for at least a long time, because you're going to help ACE scale and grow. A fun fact, he's an amateur boxer. He fought in the Eastern Olympics qualifier, which is just awesome. And so as you listen to Cory, just get your learning caps on, be prepared for fresh perspective, from a branding, from a resume perspective, and just really from a life lessons perspective. Think about the ideas that are going to be shared during our time together, and hopefully you can apply it to your own brand individually as a professional, and you look for ways to kind of improve your business. So I'll turn it over to you, Cory. Why don't we just get started? Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now. It's an exciting, kind of a fun journey. How did you get to where you are now doing what you do?
Long scenic route. Long scenic route story. I've always been fascinated by sales and marketing. And it was very unengaging the way that most colleges and schools formatted. What are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? But I remember having a specific conversation with someone and immediately knowing that I needed to start studying advertising, just immediately. And I immediately went out, I enrolled in the Art Institute of Dallas, and ended up graduating with one of the best portfolios, the best portfolio in my class for advertising design. And from there, I went out to start my career. I was like super amped up that I had won this award in the school, and it was like, you know, this big thing. And I wanted to be more advertising and strategy focused, but my portfolio was screaming graphic designer. And there's some tie into this with how the career has turned out and how resumes and aligning resumes and how all that can like shift the results. But I ended up pigeonholed in design. I say pigeonholed. I did end up at a very good company by, you know, some chance. I was with Tile and their companies, and then that was under the Mohawk umbrella. So I went to work for Mohawk for a while. They promoted me to brand manager eventually. And then I remember after just having phenomenal experience with this company, not just in terms of, I mean, it was flooring. I think it was a phenomenal experience flooring. We made flooring exciting. Like we took something really boring. I remember my greatest feat inside of it was working on the Revwood launch. And so Revwood was what we ended up rebranding and recategorizing the laminate product category to, after going through many exercises and realizing, you know, why is laminate failing us? Why isn't it working? Why aren't people buying? And we went through these focus groups and you know, these studies and these exercises and stuff among my core team and the leaders I was with. And we realized, you know, in the focus groups that people just hated the word laminate. They loved the product. We showed it to them and say, rate it 1 to 10. How wood-like is it? And it was always like 1 point behind where actual hardwood was. But when we told the people, we said, hey, this is actually, what if I told you this was a laminate product? They would just about stand up and get hostile with us. Yeah, absolutely eye-opening just as how resilient people were to the word laminate because of what it had brought before. And fast forward, we say, okay, we're going to call it revolutionary hardwood, and we're going to tell our dealers across the nation, hey, put this in the hardwood section. Don't tell people it's laminate, and sell these features, sell these benefits, and it went hit. It was, we ended up with 70% year over year increase in sales.
Wow.
And like that to me was like the holy grail. That's like that's like one of like a Mad Men challenge, right? Like, oh, this, you know, like we're gonna do this wizardry, and people are gonna love what it is, and that's what we did. And I had so much fun with that. But beyond that, there was also a lot of structural and organizational challenges that we had experienced and big growing pains. And I was jazzed up on all of that. I loved it. It was such a great experience. But then came the time where I said, what is happening here in Calhoun and the carpet capital of the world is not, while professionally is really good for me, is not serving me personally. And I knew I had to make a break. And it was, I ended Mohawk on such great terms, and which was great. I ended up having them as a client afterward. But I needed to search. I needed to get back to Dallas, where I was from, where I was based, and I spent 5 months looking for a job and applying just everything I saw, even the things I thought were below me, like anything just to get back home, just to get back to Dallas. And after 5 months, I had 2 callbacks. They were entry-level positions that I had desperately applied to, I guess. And I get on the phone and they say, oh, I'm looking at your resume now and you're overqualified. And that was the end of that. So I knew I was doing something wrong, something wasn't working, and I said I need to look into this. And about that time, LinkedIn hit me with an advertisement that said, do you want someone to review your resume, a professional? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I filled out this questionnaire, and 5 people were in my inbox. And I started going through their recommendations of what their clients were saying about them. And one profile stuck out specifically. And he had 80 reviews, and they were all like, helped me get more interviews, helped me get the job I wanted, got more offers, got higher offers, and it was just on and on and on. And I said, okay, this is my guy, obviously. His name was John, and John ended up becoming my resume writer, changed the game for me. Corrected all the bad advice, and really brought into attention how these applicant tracking systems are working, which is a major force. These are the application, the job getting landscape is not what it used to be. Right? Not when I graduated high school, certainly not when you graduated high school or graduated college. It's much different, right? You don't walk into an office and talk to a sales manager. You got to go through these systems or whatever. So that changed the game. I ended up with a job in Dallas. And I ended up in a marketing management position, and just went in and did what I could to kick ass. I remember their whole marketing department had walked out before, and it was like all over the Glassdoor, all the reviews from the former client, from the former workers, the former employees. And me being stubborn and the resilient person I am, I said, no, they're just whiners. Like, I can go in there and I can do this. And I went into that job, and on the 3rd day I said, oh my God, like what have I done? And it was just, the iceberg was rapidly showing more than just the tip of how toxic the culture was. And it's, I remember John, my resume writer, he was like, you should do this. Like, why don't you go back and take over the Dallas market and do, what I showed you to do is you're really good at this. And I said, I'm not going to go from being a brand manager of a Fortune 300 to being a resume writer. I think a resume writer is like really eccentric cat ladies with big glasses and a cigarette on the long stem or something, I was like, that's not me. But after that toxic situation ended, for about 2 months, and I was just kind of at a bottom in my life. Actually, my wife that same weekend said, it's not working. And so I was like jobless and wife, and like now wifeless. I said, okay. So I went back to John and I said, hey, if you're still interested in showing me the way, I'd like to learn. And that was an enormous catalyst for me, because it opened up the door to me being able to work for myself, to working on the sales aspect, to working on the customer aspect, to working on my writing skills, to learning something new. Which then, of course, immediately after I sold my house and had this nest egg, and I said, all right, I'm starting this new venture. Well, COVID hit and completely took me out at the knees. So, in terms of the economy, like if people were like, should I apply? Should I not? Well, am I going to have a job? Or am I not going to have a job? So it was very, very, very rough start.
Yep.
And I remember, once the travel restrictions started to lift, a buddy of mine from LA, who was LA and California was in the real throes of lockdowns and all that, he said, let's go somewhere. I said, all right, we're going to Playa. I said, I was just there right before the pandemic hit, let's go. And so I came here, I started looking at cost of living and realizing that I didn't have to be trapped in my very expensive prison cell back in uptown Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I made this transition here. That's how I got to Mexico, and still doing the resume thing. That was working for me. It was really working for me. I was getting into it. That was my third year doing it, I think. And then I started getting back. I started getting the hankering. Like I miss marketing. I miss that stature that I had working with clients. I miss being that brand manager, driving creative projects. I miss building something and giving strategy. And that's when I met up with my now partners, Sean Lyons and Justin Peyton Lee, as we know him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all in different areas of marketing and working with different market segments, but we started combining a client list, and that pulled me back in. So we've had some growing pains we've been working on, but I knew that these were my guys, and so that's how I got to where we are today.
Nice. Yeah, when I met you through a mutual friend who was a client of yours, Nate Vogel, I was referred to you through him.
Yeah.
And now, as we think about resumes, this is interesting. Maybe we'll just pivot to that. What a fascinating story. What a journey, man. How do you, when you work with someone on their resume, how do you differentiate when someone's like a leader of 50 people or someone who is an IC, an individual contributor? Is there vast differences in how you would navigate with them? And is there different things that you look for or you help them look for when they're crafting their resumes?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's subtle, right? Really, the answer to a resume is similar to marketing, is understanding who the customer is, right? Who's your audience for that? And then playing that resume specifically to that, then playing your experience specifically to that. And a lot of times, I've come up with this persona, this customer persona for who a recruiter is, and like what their limitations are, and I use that to really guide it. But almost nobody knows what a good resume looks like. Almost nobody, and especially when I started. Nowadays, I'm starting to see clients come to me with things that are, okay, great, this is making more sense. But when I first started, and still people are doing this, they're copying and pasting their old job description into their resume. Where they're asking AI nowadays, you can just have AI come up with a resume, but the resume that it's going to give you is going to sound like a job description, and that's not going to say what have been this person's impacts. What exactly was their role, and it can't do that. And so, what I help all of my clients across the board, whether they're right out of college or about to graduate college, or they're a Nate Vogel and have experience leading sales enablement for. Or yourself, who's got experience leading sales enablement across some of the best companies in the world, is I ask them questions to help elicit the information that's going to be specific to them and showcase their scale, impact, and success. And I am devout in pulling out that information, scale, impact, and success, and that's what has to be shown. And so if you're talking about an individual contributor and they're looking to go in and let's say they're an account executive, right? Well, the recruiter wants to know, have you been selling the thing to the people I need you to sell it before? Have you been working with the same type of product, right? You can't get an account executive from tech to go into account exec in cardiological medical devices, right? It's a whole different market, right? And you can't get somebody who's been selling, something at a cash register. You can't say that those same skills are going to work out for an account executive. So understanding what those skills are, what those skill sets are, and then being able to talk within those frames. And so someone like a Nate Vogel, he's a self-professed and proven culture driver, servant leader, and sales enablement expert. Okay, let's break that down. For a culture, what size cultures have you been leading, or what size teams have you been leading? And I remember when I was talking with Nate, that was a big surprise to me because I get a little bit of everybody, right? I've worked with people at all sorts of companies, but a little bit of everybody. But I remember the scale of what Nate does blew me away.
Yeah.
And I had to take a second look because he was very humble. And he was telling me, he said, "Oh, I coach people and I do, sales. I do speaking events." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And so, well, how many speaking events have you done? He's like, "Well, I've got, X number of miles traveling around the globe." I said, "Okay. And how many people have you spoken to, or how many people have you coached or trained?" And he's like something like 10,000. It's like, okay, now we're talking. So just to sum this up, if somebody is looking for, to land a sales training role or a team leadership role, when you can go out and say, "Look, I'm a team leader to the effect of having taught tens of thousands of people in these organizations, and that people hire me and bring me in as keynote speakers for their events, and I've developed a framework to enable organizations to measure the impact of their enablement efforts, and no one's been able to do that. Now we're conveying something that
it sets him apart.
AI can't do, right?
Sets that person
Something that
apart.
sets them apart.
Yeah.
And the resume should set you apart, because a recruiter is going to look and say, okay, and in the list of candidates, okay, account exec here, account exec there, account exec here, account exec there. But when you talk about, hey, I'm account exec and I do enterprise level clients, I support, $50 million of sales a year per se, and I do this many calls, these are my avenues, and you break it down like that, it becomes so much more effective. So
Yeah.
It's understanding your place and then being able to speak to that.
Yeah. Well, what do you do when this, I think recruiters now leverage AI to be able to cull a resume to go, "Oh, that's person." So the AI sometimes helps move someone up the candidate list. Do you know much about how that works and how you can leverage your resume to have an AI bot that kind of goes, "Oh, let's target it."
So
is that am I not right? Am I right in that?
You are right. In fact, I was just yesterday listening to a gym session. They were talking about talent in 2025. And so Gym is a platform that is similar to one that I worked for. I stepped into technical recruiting for a little bit for a company called Teamable. Teamable is really they're called Humanly now. They've been through an acquisition, and I don't work. When I started working for them, they were ramping up to sell their RPO function into their organizations. They work with a lot of FANG companies. And what they are is an AI and machine learning driven platform portfolio of tools meant to help recruiters better humanize the process, fill in the gaps of where recruiters fall short, because recruiters do fall short in communications and how things go. And it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the beast of recruiting, right? Every recruiter has good nature and wants to solve that problem. Every recruiter I've ever met who's new, they want to solve that problem, the candidate experience. But the candidate experiences so many hiccups when you start a role and then priorities shift within the organization, or the hiring manager is busy, or the role is constantly being revised. And that's where a lot of frustration comes from. But these platforms are really meant to help the recruiters along the way. But just like the AI we know that it can't do our jobs for us, right? It has to constantly be tested or reiterated in terms of the quality that comes out. And it's on an amazing trajectory, like exponentially increasing every day. But there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of myths, and AI's place in this has, in the recruiting cycle, has really been exaggerated in a lot of areas, or is misconceived. And so how we experience AI vetting our resumes or whatever it is often there's an algorithm that's checking for competitiveness or relevance from the resume to the job description. Okay, they have what I just refer to as the ATS keywords, the keywords in every single specific job description that are important to get noticed. And beyond that, because a lot of recruiters have noticed that that's not really the way, that that's not the best indicator of somebody, is this algorithm showing. I mean, in fact, if I took AI today, let's say I took Grok, or if I took ChatGPT, and I designed my resume specifically for a job, and I said, hey, Grok, tell me how my resume stacks up against this job description. It would say, well, you know, I'd give it, and I would say, tell me, like, 1 out of 10, where does it fall? And it would say a 7. And I'm like, really? I think it's like an 8 or a 9. In my professional, having done this for almost 7 years experience, I would say this is like an 8 or 9. And I say, well, where are the weaknesses? Where are the opportunities? And it'll say, it'll point out silly things. It's like, well, the resume doesn't expressly say that you're available to travel 25% of the time. The resume doesn't. It nitpicks, right? And so that's not a recruiter's process. A recruiter's process is not to nitpick like that. They want to see, have you been doing the thing? Are you comfortable doing the thing?
Yep.
Right? Are you in the realm? Right? And all those other little things, like, is this person available to travel? Is this person available to work overtime or weekends? Is this person, you know? And I'm harping on that because this is one of the recent feedbacks that I've got from it. And there's other ways that it'll dive in. Like if you talk, oh, I'm a project manager, and it's like, well, we didn't expressly see anything about you doing risk mitigation. It's like talking about like I deliver timelines, right? Like deliver on time and in budget. So obviously these things that are baked in, but the AI is putting too much importance on it. So if the AI is putting too much importance on that, then it's going to be a fail. It's going to fail every single time. If it's taking all these good candidates and saying they're not at the mark. So that's something that we're up against, unfortunately. So we do the best we can. And I encourage all my clients, we're going to do all the things that we can. We're going to play to the highest common denominator just so that you can sleep at night. Because oftentimes we get caught up in the, well, what about this? Or the, what about this? And this happens all the time when I go through and I give my client the end or the baseline version of their resume. And they say, what about this? Well, we could sit around and what about this all day.
Yeah.
We could sit around and make up questions or make up answers to questions that were not being asked all day. And that's why doing an alignment is so important to the application process, to getting seen. Because in terms, there's the AI piece, but then there's also things that smart recruiters do. And a smart recruiter takes a little bit different approach. It's a much smarter approach. You're going to use what's called Boolean search strings. It's a series of keywords separated by ands, ors, and nots. So the way that the ATS is looking for those ATS keywords, the recruiter is going to have their own string of keywords, right? And it can be made anything like vertical, industry, SaaS, software sales. If I'm thinking in terms of like an AE, what about like market penetration, go-to-market ability? You know, these keywords that have come up. Okay, so I need an AE who's got go-to-market experience. Maybe they were like in marketing before, or maybe they were some sort of analyst before, and they have experience working with. I mean, you name it. It could be like security technologies or CRM technologies, and they have to be working with enterprise or whatever the market segment is, right? So a recruiter will build this out, and they can search on LinkedIn. They can search on something like Humanly or Jim, any third-party platforms, and they can search within their applicant tracking system as well. They can query who's applied within a certain amount of time that meets this, that maybe got turned down. And so that's how we would align. That's how we would get a candidate ready in terms to meet AI, but then also for the human search as well.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, obviously you've talked to a lot of people, professionals, and you've helped a lot land jobs, helping align their resume with, I know you said there's a ton of questions that you ask. And what do you see as the biggest pitfalls? Maybe one or two or maybe three quick pitfalls that you see when professionals try and make their resumes.
The copying and pasting of the job description into their resume
Don't do that.
is a big pitfall because it takes up a lot of space, and how a recruiter is going to skim, they're not going to read unless they see a reason to. And so the second shortfall is not having numbers, not having quantifiable bits in there that that reinforce scale successes and impacts. Because seeing those numbers, especially in a sales role, seeing some numbers like that, I mean, it's really in any role. It starts to lessen as you get down into something like a designer, like a creative designer. You're not really able to quantify things so much, but it grabs the eye. When you're skimming down a resume, you want something that's going to grab their eye and say, oh, what is this? And then start reading, because that's how a recruiter does. They're skimming for that information. And so the third pitfall, I think, would be sending the same resume into every single job without editing it.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. That's good. Those are three quick ones too. Nice. How about then what would be the advice that you'd give someone that wants to take it, right? So there's some pitfalls. Is the advice just the opposite of the pitfalls, or like, what would you say, like one or two, or maybe even a third? Either, I mean, yeah, it could be quick or long, whatever it takes to make their resume shine more.
Well, the obvious solution is to reach out to me.
There we go. Besides that, that's the obvious. That's point one. And
let somebody else take it off. It's good to get other eyes onto it, but just to kind of piggyback on this, a major pitfall I see people trying to do it themselves is they ask their friends, they ask their coworkers, hey, check my resume out. And it's like, through what experience are they able to give you any advice? Have they seen successful resumes before? Because everybody comes back and says, a lot of times they feel obligated to give opinions. This is something I've noticed about recruiters. Like when you ask them about, hey, can I get some advice on my resume? Because we all have recruiter friends, right? I think a lot of times they feel they honestly feel obligated to give advice, or they feel like they have to, even though the advice is not valuable or it's not good. And I think that just probably comes with trying to own their territory, but taking a look at it from a recruiter's perspective. If you can understand what the recruiter's perspective is and understand, okay, what industry is this? What vertical are they in? What is the product that they're selling, and how can I really speak to that?
Yep.
Right. Versus, here's my resume and I'm going to send it into every single job. One thing that consistently, even myself, if I've applied to roles over the years and had some side projects as well. Even myself, we're all guilty of finding it difficult to separate ourselves from information that we think is important, that we think is valuable. And if we may think it's cool, and I've worked for companies and branding positions where they thought this information, the customer needs it. And then you get in and you start going through the customer journey, you start talking to the customers, and you say, well, they're not even looking at that. This is irrelevant. Like this is for somebody in like a different segment. This is somebody in a different market. So being able to look subjectively and say, hey, you know what, I got to recategorize laminate, I recategorized the whole product, but the position I'm applying to is really just a creative project manager. They want me to just, make sure that the creative kittens are designing, right? That the work is being done at the end of the day, that there's consistency across. They don't care about something like that, right? So that's a tough one.
It's cool. Well, you're an entrepreneur, right? This is what you do, right? And what made you decide, and maybe you even talked about it just a bit earlier, but I'd love to hear, like, what made you decide, I got to do my own thing?
I got to go back to college for this one. I had always thought of ideas of businesses. I don't know what it is. Just I've always done things that I thought were cool, or I'd see an opportunity and say, I'm going to do this. And I remember I once had like a promotion company for a club, for like clubs, but it was different than the other promotion companies that were out there, right? You ever met a club promoter, and then you're like, oh, cool, I know someone at the club, right? And then you get their number, and then they're messaging you every night, like, come out, come out, come out, come out, come out. Well, this is actually a very innovative way of doing things, where we were only marketing to females, and we were trying to, build like on Facebook, and I think that was probably the only social media that was available at the time. Maybe there was some MySpace still kind of like hanging on, but we would market to them and say, hey, we're going to do this event, this place, and then it would be like me and the other guys that worked on my companies, like 4 or 5 of us, and we would show up with like 30. I think the best night we had was like 60 women, and the clubs love that, because if you walk into a bar with, it's saturated with beautiful women, you're going to stay there. You're not going anywhere else that night, like as a bar patron. And so that was the deal. They would pay us, and we got to have this really cool lifestyle. But that was the first one. And then I think the second one was, I was driving seafood from the Gulf Coast to the Dallas market and selling it to the higher end restaurants as well. And I was doing that while I was waiting for my degree, or while I was finishing up my last year, my portfolio. And then it just got to a point where I really needed to invest in having a truck and, building out like a legal team for contracts and stuff, because it's a very difficult market. We can't just rely on people's promises. And so I said, all right, well, I'm going back to, I landed an internship at that time with Fleischman Hillard, which is the top 4 PR agency. And so I ended up focusing on that career, because I'd gone through school and I really wanted to do it. And in one of the classes that I had, it was, I can't remember. I know we talked about a lot of politics, and it was just eye-opening, because I didn't know anything about politics or economy. I think that's what it was. It was a class on global economy. And in that class, I remember I got it in my head, like, that is the ultimate way to give back. That is the ultimate form of being, is somebody who is an employer. And that was just the idea that I had. And it was because, you have your dream, you have your vision, but you're also employing people, right? You're providing a service that somebody wants, and you have people behind you, you're leading them. And so that's what I kept going back to. But when I tried to do it on my own as a graphic designer, I didn't like the clients I was getting. It was frustrating. And so I think that I was just waiting for the right opportunity to be able to find something and then go forward with. Yeah. And so a part of the growing pains that I've had with the agency is making sure that we're all aligned and all have the right skill sets that we need, and that we're all focusing on the right markets or have the right skills that we need for our clients.
Yeah, well, and you're really good about that. You're really good about, when there's an issue or an area you find that there's someone probably more capable, you'll leverage them for design elements that we've had. I've seen you multiple times, bring somebody else in to help with a specific project. And so I imagine that's what you're getting at right there, is you've got people that can help. You mentioned you went through some growing pains. So is there any advice you can give them that will help them succeed as quick as possible?
Yeah, do something easier. Go find one of these AI based businesses that you can scale with almost nothing and have no involvement in. The growing pains that I've had have been really trying to up-level myself from a point of, the perfectionism, the hands-on, the setting, the doing of the thing. And that's what I did at Mohawk, and that's why I went so far. Was I started off in the creative department, and I was the best. I was the fastest of the production artists, of the graphic designers that we had, because I would formalize things, I would template them, I would incorporate all the new features, bells and whistles, to where things were automatic and drastically shortening times. And that's what all of my customers have loved about me, is my ability to go in and show that consistency across the board. But there gets to be a time where it's like, okay, well, I have to think bigger. I have to do these bigger, more higher level tasks, and I need to find somebody that I can train to think like me, but also bring other elements to the table, right? To take over these things so that I can just, at the end of the day, relax. And I think that for me, that has been my biggest growing pain, is just trying to get to the hands-off part. So if someone was looking to start a business, the question would be, what is it, and is it scalable? and how easily would it be scalable, and what's standing in the way of you scaling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you have those three things, you can decide, okay, is this business venture going to be worth it? And then how quickly can I get it up to speed?
Sure. Yeah, well, I've been really lucky that I've been leveraging you and Lee and your team, right, in areas that are just not my strength. So had I tried to figure that on my own, I'd still be on the website design, And so I'm so
the
grateful.
ACE project has been so fun.
Yeah, ACE has been a really good fun project, huh?
I remember when you came to me, you said, "Oh, I think like a logo for this and a logo for that," and then you ended up letting me shift your business strategy a little bit.
Oh yeah, not a little bit, a lot. I mean, lots. I mean, I thought I would just have a website and then it would be enough originally, right? I was like, well, there's a certain budget I have, and I thought a website would be the way to go. And you and Lee, you guys helped really shift my mind and you made it much bigger. You helped me expand my belief of what's possible. I cut you off. I apologize.
No, that's fine. It was, number one, I was empowered by my designer, my creative director. She's just fantastic with design. And so when I sat down and started talking with her about what it was, and we had our back and forth, and then we started delivering the visuals, and so it even caught up. I said, "Man, this is going to be a great platform." And then we brought in Lee, and Lee was I think, not only did he give you the show you what the next space was to grow, but it pushed me too, because now you're in community management, right? We're trying to grow this community. And I remember your reaction and my reaction were the same thing. I was like, yeah, so I'm talking to Lee, so you're going to be open to some ideas, but he's talking about building a community. And you're like, what do you mean? Because I think you and I were thinking like Telegram, and like, dude, it seems like it was so much effort, and like it would be so much work, and becoming this social media face. I remember you telling me that you're like, I'm not interested. I don't think that's going to be me. And then that has become you. Like, you have become that person. Like, you just get on and you talk, and you have this platform. And when we look at the engagement that you're getting on LinkedIn, it's growing.
Yeah.
It's constantly growing. And so it's baby steps right now, but now we have it almost formulaic to, we're starting to see who your real audience is, and they're going to start building, they're going to start growing. The content that you're giving them, and the way that you're giving them, it's been fun to watch, and it's even inspired me now to go out and say, I got to start speaking up in terms of the things that I'm doing. I got to start getting out there and making these videos and being one of those faces on the internet.
That's good. Well, hopefully this will help a little bit get you out there too, because you deserve it, man. You deserve it for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I would love for your network to invite me in and let me help them like I've helped you and Nate. I think that would be just a dream come true. But I'm here for you. I'm here to help you, whatever that next bid is for ACE, and how we tackle that. So thanks for that opportunity.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't imagine not doing it without you now. You're just such a big, important part of my team
Thank you.
to make it a reality and keep it rolling. And it's getting there, right? It is really getting there. Let's shift a little bit with the time we have. I do want to talk about boxing, and I just think it's really cool. Because I've never done that. I wrestled through college, so I understand that kind of there's a certain similar discipline, right? That individual sport requires a lot of discipline. And so, I mean, you completed an Ironman. I did too, which is great. So congratulations on that. But what was it like competing as a boxer, and how long did you do it? Like, just quickly, what do you like? And then I'd love to hear, if you can tie it in, what parallels, if any, can you draw between what you were able to do and the skills you were able to learn as a boxer to the world of the professional world, if there's any parallels?
I started late into boxing. I don't think I started until I was 25.
Oh gosh, okay.
And my last fight was in 2018. I would have been 32 maybe. So I had like a 8-year run, and I was very fortunate in the group that I landed with, because there's so many like wanky boxing coaches out there that would like see you throw your first punch and be like, oh, I can train you, I can get you ready to fight professionally next week. And the group that I was in, they were very realistic guys, and they actually attracted a lot of talent. I remember getting to see Errol Spence Jr., and my coach sparring, every Sunday. And Derek James, Errol Spence's coach, and the boxers he would bring around, which were professional. Robert Brandt Jr., I got to hang out with him, and we were buddies for a while. It did a lot in terms of opening up a good social circle, opening up a good setting, taking me away from what I had previously prioritized, which was going out and drinking and doing just wasting a weekend. And if I had that in my mind that Saturday morning I'm going to go work out first thing in the morning, and Sunday I'm going to spar, well, I'm not going to go do that hungover. That's an awful idea. So that was a big benefit. Competing at that age was difficult. Because I had this corporate job that I was walking up and down the halls of, and I was a contractor at the time, right? So, I'd show up with a shiner, I'd show up with bruises here, or some cuts.
Yeah, that branding meeting was real difficult, team.
Well, it's a good thing I wasn't invited into meetings at that time, but because I had people, and they would stop me and they would say, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm training. I'm a boxer." And but it was very difficult because they always want you to drop weight, and I walk around right now comfortably 165, 170. And they want me down to 150.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 140 even if you could. And I did that one time, and my roommate came up and he's like, "Are you sick? Do you need help? Do you need a cheeseburger or something?" It wasn't a good look, and it's equally exhausting with the training and the effects that it has on your body to fast and do all that. So I didn't get to do as much of it as I wanted. In a weekend tournament, you're basically sitting there parked in a gym with no AC and monitoring your water intake and wishing you could eat while your anxiety and your adrenaline is just flowing through your body, wearing you out. So how that translates is I've had tough meetings and I've been in uncomfortable situations with clients or with projects. And I always remember telling myself, at least no one's hitting me in the face.
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the only takeaway I have. But another one would be, as I look back when I start something new, when I wanted to start up this agency, and I said, I don't know if I have what I need. I don't know if I have everything yet. I don't know. And I said, "Dude, you remember when you were 25 and you just started taking punches in the face. You just started taking punches in the face, and you sucked. And then after a while, you started getting good. You started commanding respect. There was one time I remember, best feedback I ever got. We had a Sunday sparring match, and usually the highlight was Errol Spence and my coach Tony Mack. And I got in there and sparred with somebody. Can't remember who now, but it was good. It was tough. I remember I went out in the first round and just 8 shots and went back to the corner, and my coach was like, "All right, you done messing around now?" I said, Yeah. So and he was like, "Look for this, look for that, change it." I said, "Okay, great." So I went out there, did it, and I just dominated through the rest of the match. And afterwards, he called me so excited. He was like, "Dude, everybody in the gym says that your sparring match today was the highlight of the day." I said, even Tony and Errol's match came in second. I said, "Oh, that's good."
That's cool.
But you don't have everything you need. You're not going to win the first time in boxing. Everybody gets hit in boxing, no matter how good your defense is. You're going to get hit. You're going to not do well sometimes. But if you can keep at it, you'll keep getting better. The experience will build. The things will fall into place. You'll start naturalizing everything.
Yeah. That's a great parallel, because you do. In sales, man, you're always getting hit in the face. As a leader, you're always getting a gut punch or something. And how do you react to that? And if you develop the skin or the toughness to handle those and keep moving forward, that's what's going to help, right? The best salespeople, that no, they were expecting, boom, hits them hard, but then they go, no, I've been through that before. It's all good. I'm going to be fine. And then they pick up the next phone call and they go right away. They don't dwell on that piece of getting hit. They stay in the fight and they keep going. I think that's a good parallel.
On that, we would say, in boxing, you say, never look away from the punch. Always see it coming. even if you know it's coming, don't look away from it, because the moment you look away, something's going to come from
Another
the blind
side.
spot. And I imagine it's the same way in sales. 'Cause at least if I see where the no is coming from, then I know how to handle that.
Yeah.
I know exactly how to counter it. I know exactly what to say. I know what to follow up with. But the moment you look away, and the moment you look away from a big problem, it's all going to come crumbling down. You gotta look that punch in the face and accept it, and then figure out how to roll it off or bounce back with the next one.
I love it. I love it. Hey, so before we wrap, if someone were to listen, they want some branding help, or hey, I love what he was talking about with regards to resume. I'd love to talk to him. How do they reach out? What's the best way for them to connect with you? Through LinkedIn, or what's your email? Like, just share, how could they reach out to you?
LinkedIn, email address, coryb.simon@gmail.com. I am always open to hearing new client problems, and we're actively looking for new clients right now, and the clients that we're looking for are those who don't want the same that they've had, those who are looking for a fresh perspective on a problem, because what I bring to the table, and you've been through the process of what Nate's been through the process, is I go out there and I look and say, who's doing what you're doing, and how different do we need to be to stand out? Mm-hmm. How can we provide a different experience for the customer? So if somebody is looking to say, hey, we've got this problem or this video, or we need this creative solution, yeah, let's talk. I would love to hear about it. Love to bring the team in and see if we can solution that.
Yeah. Okay, so reach out to Cory. We love him. I love him here with Ace, and Nate loves him. He's just good at what he does. Stay tuned for the next Ace show, when I believe we're going to be interviewing your counterpart, Lee.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Lee will be in the next one.
But he's such an interesting guy.
Yeah, he is. I can't wait to chat with him. And so, hey, I hope you all enjoyed this conversation, and may you ace your life. We'll see you on the next show.
Thanks, David.
All right, thank you.